Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another video. So we've had a lot of Mando news over the last couple of days, and as we wait for the release of the final trailer, which is still rumoured to drop on Christmas Day, some of the stars of the show have been teasing it, and the most recent is the face and voice of Djarin himself, Pedro Pascal. In a new interview at CCXP with Omelette, he said there are gonna be Luke Skywalker level reveals in Season 3. Now, if you guys remember a few months ago, a plot rumour did state that the cameos in the third season would be immense, and even greater than what we saw in the first two, and that seems to be in line with what Pedro is hinting at. So whether it's Boba Fett, Bo-Katan, Luke or Ahsoka, The Mandalorian has brought Star Wars fans a lot of hope in the form of character appearances. In the Omelette interview, the Mandalorian star said, "Season 3 is going to blow fans away with its surprises." Here is the full quote: "There is so much that you're going to see. I think some of the best things about Season 1 and Season 2 of The Mandalorian were the surprises. We were all able to keep Baby Grogu a secret. We were all able to keep Luke Skywalker's return to the world a secret, so there are more secrets to keep." Defining the highly anticipated third season in just one word, the Djarin actor Pedro Pascal opted for epic. Pascal was then asked to comment on the experience of using the Darksaber on set, describing it as, quote, "something you have to learn to dance with." Truly channeling his character, he said it has rules that reveal themselves, but that's all he can say. So, a few strong hints there, and I think the big question a lot of us have is what kind of characters could make an appearance. The possibilities are truly endless in this post-Return of the Jedi era, but I definitely think Rebels characters could premiere in Mando before the Ahsoka show. Maybe Natasha Liu Bordizzo as Sabine Wren, maybe Rex, Wolf, Hera, but also in the wider scope of the political scene of the New Republic. It'd be amazing to get tie-ins to some other Rebel figures who are prominent at this time. So a really exciting tease there from Pedro. And now staying on the subject of The Mandalorian, Jon Favreau teases a much bigger scope in the third season. Speaking at the same CCXP panel for the show in Brazil, Jon Favreau appeared alongside Dave Filoni via video link, and here is what the showrunner said: "I will say that the scope of it is getting bigger. We have some really cool space battles which have a lot of Mandalorians. We have the planet of Mandalore, which we've been talking about for a long time. We get to see the Mandalorian culture, and many of the wonderful actors you've seen in previous seasons return, and you'll see them all work together on this show. It's been a very ambitious season. A lot of our directors have returned. We have a very experienced team that have been working together for a long time, and I think a lot of people are going to enjoy what we have in store." And as I mentioned in yesterday's video guys, in reference to these cool space battles, there is a scene in the final trailer where Djarin is running away from TIE fighters, so that's going to be epic, really the classic tropes of the Star Wars franchise. When he talks about returning actors and directors, a lot of these have been confirmed over the last few months. For example, Taika Waititi, Rick Famuyiwa, Carl Weathers, Bryce Dallas Howard, and others. So before we move on, share your thoughts of this in the comments down below. And so now, we have a really interesting tidbit regarding George Lucas's ex-wife. Marcia Lucas famously edited the original Star Wars trilogy, and many Star Wars fans rightly credit her for saving Star Wars in the edit. She knew what worked and what didn't, and without her input, the galaxy far, far away would not be as iconic as it is. She understood the heart of Star Wars and what makes those three films absolute classics. Now, some of you might remember last year, she called out Kathleen Kennedy and J.J. Abrams for the way they handled the sequel trilogy, and she called it terrible. In the late 90s and early 2000s, she was also very critical of The Phantom Menace. Well, now, she's opened up about Return of the Jedi, and considering next year, 2023, marks the 40th anniversary of Episode 6, the timing is perfect. In an email that was shared with Patrick Cotenoir, Marcia Lucas revealed the issues with editing Return of the Jedi, which was then known as Revenge of the Jedi. Lucas reveals that Episode 6 was the most problematic editorially, to the point where she had to leave her other commitments to fix it. In her own words, she says, "It went through several English editors, and we weren't happy with any of the assembled footage. I had to beg another movie to stay and fix this one." And then she gives some examples. She puts particular emphasis on the battle above the Sarlacc pit on Tatooine, Jabba's sail barge. This is her quote: "The battle in the desert over the monster hole. I spent 2 months cutting that into something intelligible. I worked with Rose at ILM for the entire time. She probably hates me to this day. I was always on her to get finished effect shots so I could cut them in." And ironically guys, that scene over the Sarlacc pit is considered to this day one of the most iconic visual effects scenes in cinema history. She then talks about Yoda's original death scene. It was very different to the final product. Marcia made it what it was. She says the original scene was too dry, and initial cuts with Mark Hamill as Luke had to be cut because they were too emotionless. This is what she said: "I cut Yoda's death scene together. In the first cuts it was too dry, no emotion from Luke, and by extension the audience." And personally, my dear friends, I love Yoda's death scene. And did you know the blanket he's wearing is actually Qui-Gon's robe? Years later, when The Phantom Menace dropped, they retconned the robe he was wearing in Return of the Jedi on his deathbed to actually be Qui-Gon's Jedi robes. And Yoda's death scene is so important because he tells Luke that there's another Skywalker, Leia. And it's confirmation that Vader was indeed Luke's father. Audiences had to wait 3 years for that confirmation between The Empire Strikes Back and Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. And a fun fact, Rian Johnson years down the line would name Episode 8 The Last Jedi because in Return of the Jedi, in the Yoda death scene, he tells Luke, "When gone am I, the last of the Jedi will you be." Now, interestingly enough, the marriage between Marcia and George Lucas came to an end during the post-production on Episode 6. In many interviews, she insisted the reason for their divorce was that George was obsessed with his work, and she felt as though her husband was pulled away from her. But despite their marital issues at the time, George Lucas very much respected Marcia and her talent, and very much wanted her on board as part of the process, as she worked with Paul Hirsch on the final edit of Episode 6. But by the end of the job, she famously lost all creative interest in Star Wars. Now, all these years later, Return of the Jedi is beloved by most Star Wars fans. I mean, sure, it's often said that Empire was better, but still, the original trilogy, all three of them, are absolute classics. Even those things she didn't like the Sarlacc pit, Yoda's death scene, some of the creature designs, and so on, are regarded to this day as iconic. And with the 40th anniversary coming up, I can imagine at Star Wars Celebration in London, there's probably going to be a special panel. They're probably going to invite some actors, some of those puppeteers, producers, creature designers, and so on. I think that's going to be really cool. And more than anything, Return of the Jedi and the time period after has set up so many of these upcoming shows. Of course, The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, Skeleton Crew, and Ahsoka. So I'm so happy we got Episode 6 as we did, and Marcia Lucas is an amazing editor. But with that said, my dear friends, share your thoughts in the comments down below of everything we spoke about. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and also, my dear friends, I'm having 30% off all of my merch store. Use the code MEG30 at checkout. That link is also down there in the description. But until the next one, guys, may the Force be with you always. Okay, so this was going to be the original opening scene for Luke in Return of the Jedi, but it was changed. As we know, the first appearance of Luke is him on Tatooine when he enters Jabba's palace and he chokes the Gamorrean guards. Now that intro is so powerful, it shows you the power of editing and what to leave out, what to put in, because that was foreshadowing what Luke could become. But Luke rejects the potential path of joining the dark side. Instead, he chooses the path of the light to help his friends. But that shows you his progression throughout the film. And then obviously at the end, he throws his lightsaber when Palpatine says, "Good, you're fulfilling your destiny," all of that kind of thing, because he brings back the Return of the Jedi. A lot of people think Return of the Jedi refers to Luke, but it's actually Anakin.